SuperTalk Mississippi media production.
Middays with Gerard Gibert is on the air. Middays with Gerard Gibert is powered by C-Spire. Power your home or business with C-Spire Fiber. To learn more, visit supertalk.fm/C-Spire. C-Spire Fiber powers SuperTalk Mississippi. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. Hello. You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Midday SuperTalk Mississippi. I'm your host, Gerard Gibert, along with Rhino in the Element Wealth Studio, guiding you through the middle of your day with facts, fodder, and fine music on this Hump Day. It would be the Hump Day after the State of the Union address. Add that little qualification in there, and man, it set a record, longest ever. 107.7 minutes. That bested the president's address last March of 99.5 minutes. And the record prior to that held by Bubba Bill Clinton, 88.8 minutes, January 27th, 2000. Yeah, man. So what a speech it was. And, of course, oh, geez, one of the members pretty swiftly escorted out of the chamber there. That happened last year. Did it not, Rhino? I believe so.
It's become his tradition.
Al Green, the man. Oh, geez. He got kicked out of the State of the Union over a sign about black people. Democratic Representative Al Green of Texas, he briefly interrupted the address and was quickly removed from the House of Democrats. He was ushered out of the chamber, and I don't know who it was, but somebody grabbed his sign on the way out. He held up a banner reading, "Black people aren't apes," in an apparent, I guess, reference to that video the president shared where President Obama and Michelle Obama, former First Lady, were depicted as apes in that video that the president posted on his Truth Social account. Perhaps the greatest chuckle of the night came when the president pointed to the Democrats. He said, "These people are crazy. I'm telling you, they're crazy." He must be listening to you. The president later said that about the Democrats, of course, when he was pointing to them. And perhaps most telling about the divide between the parties was when the president simply made the statement and asked all those who agreed with it to rise. And that statement was, I'm paraphrasing a bit. You may have to look it up for me, Rhino. That the actual statement was, if you think that the primary function of government is to look out for Americans over illegals, or something to that effect, rise if you agree with that statement. I don't think a Democrat stood up that I can recall. Did anybody on that side of the aisle stand up?
I don't remember on that exact point, but if I had to guess, I would say Fetterman stood up because he seemed to rise a lot more often than any other Democrat.
Yeah. And it's interesting how he's kind of dissenting with his party, is it not? Yeah, he said the president asked he stated that the first duty of the American government is to protect American citizens, not illegal aliens. That seems pretty straightforward. Is it not just crazy we even have to make that statement? Now,
he brought that up, too, when talking about the trans issue.
You're right. He sure did. That he brought up, as we have on this program, that we're even having a talk about this and enact legislation at the federal and state level to deal with this. Who would have thought? For sure. And he made that point.
Whoever was directing the production that was on, like, the video feed.
Yeah.
Because little inside baseball, in a TV production like that, you got a director looking at a bunch of different monitors that are all the different camera angles. And he's usually in the ear of the different camera operators, telling them what he wants. And he's the one pushing the buttons, choosing what's on the screen. Whoever the director was must have at least some sense of humor, because there were several times throughout the State of the Union where Trump would say something and he would cut immediately to somebody that is like the funniest possible person in the audience you could find. Like Trump says Somali pirates, cut to Ilhan Omar. Trump talks about trans, cut to the dude that's trying to be a woman, McBride or whatever.
The actual rep serving in Congress. Yeah. From Massachusetts, I think, or one of those states. But just this, I thought it was brilliant, honestly. This very simple statement, just assertion, if you will, that, the first duty of the United States government is to protect the interest of American citizens. That as a priority over illegal aliens. Of course, he already hacks them off by using the word illegal alien. They get all upset about that. Undocumented immigrants. Oh, jeez. How can in this day and age of such sophistication, such power, can we get tied up in knots about words like that? To the point where people not only just freak out, heck, over in the UK, you do stuff like that, they come arrest you and take your butt to jail. And there are people in this country, make no mistake, that want to do the same thing. Over words, mere words. And I'm not talking about words like, I'm going to kill somebody. Yeah, I can see how that may warrant a bit of an investigation, especially if it's a person who says that about an elected official or, God forbid, the president. Yeah, that's supposed to draw a little bit more attention. But this idea of illegal aliens, and they're just steaming, just seething at that statement. And I don't recall any of them rising in agreement with the president is asserting that the first duty of the federal government is to protect Americans. How could that even be up for debate? Man, oh man. Well, he said it right. These people are crazy. And, of course, O'Green, he interrupted the president's address last year and was escorted out. So that's two in a row for him. I'm going to go out on a limb here and reference your theory. He's looking for attention. 100%. He's just miserable and he's looking for attention. He also said, "You have no mandate." He said that at one point and shook his cane at the president. Oh, gosh. Unbelievable.
Don Quixote that fought the windmills?
Yeah. Exactly.
Al Green on his own private crusade.
And, of course, I know you're shocked at this. And when the press talked to him about being escorted, his thoughts on that, escorted out of the chamber, he said, it's racism, right? Oh, my gosh. He had the old race card in the back pocket. No, he had it in every pocket, actually. Doesn't matter
he's
what.
He's like a magician. Just one out of there, one out of there, one out of here, one behind your ear.
Oh, my gosh. So much to get to regarding that. One little interesting tidbit that I didn't see coming was the president announced a new retirement plan at the State of the Union address. And this would be a 401k type plan, sort of modeled after the thrift savings plan that employees of the federal government have access to. And that's just kind of their version of a traditional 401k plan. But this would be for people who don't have one. There are about 45 million of those in the country that don't have access to a 401k plan through their employer or on their own. Most really won't go through the trouble to do that. Apparently, the federal government is going to contribute $1,000 a year to such plans for those people if they contribute $2,000, is my understanding. Now, lots of details still to be released about that, but at the highest level, and it looks like you can check the box on your tax return to enroll and take care of that. Coming right back in the Element Wealth studio, Kiersten Pels, RNC National Press Secretary, later today.
Hey, this is Bob, and if you're...
This segment of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by Covington County Hospital in Collins, where your health matters.
The talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
We're rolling. Hit it. Go. Play it.
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
I believe, Rhino, it was Ronald Reagan that kicked off what has now become a tradition of bringing in various guests to the State of the Union address and honoring them. Seems like that he highlighted that, focused on that more than prior presidents, as I recall. But the president, he had a number of individuals present. It was really pretty cool. Of course, the U.S. hockey team, which, of course, he invited after their incredible victory.
Much to the consternation of some in sports media.
I saw that.
That's been a wild thing to watch.
What's the deal? Not that big a deal.
Some people who tend to overreact heard the phone call from President Trump to the men's hockey team in the locker room during the celebrations, where he joked about how he'll have to invite the women's team too, or he'll be impeached. And they all laughed, and they said, "Yeah, invite them too." And it was a joke.
Yeah,
on a phone call in a locker room. People took offense, like people take offense to everything else in this world, and it's been a story on social media for 48 hours plus.
Oh, my gosh.
People just losing their minds that somehow the hockey players don't see how they were so misogynistic, and it was behind their backs, and we need the hockey moms to tell their sons to be better men. It's just insanity.
Oh, gee whiz. Well, the hockey team did arrive in the room there to cheers and applause. And it turns out there's a Maryland seafood restaurant that is offering free crab cakes for life to the U.S. hockey teams, both the men's and women's team, who came away with the gold. Free crab cakes for life. By the way, if you hadn't had crab cakes in Maryland, where the crabs come from, they're pretty good. That's pretty
it's
neat.
Their version of our fried catfish.
That's true.
That's kind of their speciality.
Good point. So other awards that the president announced and presented last night, including, of course, the Presidential Medal of Freedom to the goalie on the hockey team. He really praised the goalie, said it was an incredible performance. I may pronounce his name incorrectly. Connor Helleboyk? How do you say it? His last name?
Hellebuck?
I'm not sure, and I don't recall in watching the broadcast. I had the sound down. I was watching it and listening to something else. But he awarded it to the hockey team's goalie there. Believes that, he said, I've never seen a goaltender play as well as goalie Connor Hellebuck. Interesting. Didn't see that coming, but that's pretty cool. He also awarded the Purple Heart to National Guardsman Andrew Wolf. He was shot in downtown Washington, D.C., not far from where he was speaking last year, and survived. I remember that incident. Also recall that he was accompanied by Army Specialist Sarah Beckstrom, who was wounded in the attack and was hanging on for life and then later succumbed to her injuries. The Purple Heart, of course, is awarded to those members of the armed forces who were wounded or killed in action. And then Scott Ruskin, Coast Guard rescue swimmer out of Corpus Christi, Texas, was awarded the Legion of Merit for rescuing 165 people from Camp Mystic. Remember that tragedy, an all-girls Christian summer camp along the Guadalupe River that was hit by the floods in central Texas last year. The Legion of Merit is a U.S. military decoration for outstanding service. And then the highest honor of all that can be bestowed upon a member of the Armed Forces, nation's highest military honor, the Medal of Honor. 2 presented last night. I got to tell you, I choked up a little bit watching that. I mean, it's got the chill bumps. One was Chief Warrant Officer Eric Slover, wounded during the recent operation that captured former President Maduro of Venezuela. He stood tall. I believe he had a walker, best I could tell, right? He was kind of leaning on a walker
that,
there.
Or it was the wrist crutches.
Okay. Couldn't tell. It was kind of low there, and you had the railing in front of him. But he was awarded, and that was his wife standing next to him, and she was smiles and patting him. It was really cool. But you know the neat thing, and this is just, of course, a tradition in our military that I'm always so respectful of, is just that, again, that stone-faced, stoical, all-business look on his face, standing in attention, zero reaction, while the president was announcing his receipt of the Medal of Honor, and then the general behind him putting it around his neck and fastening it. That was pretty cool, you have to admit. He finally did smile a little bit. Of course, he's more than entitled to, but that's the kind of moment makes me proud to be an American, honestly. You see someone in their dress blues receive that award, doing his duty, injured as part of that, serving his country. Man, isn't that what it's all about?
The Medal of Honor is for valor above and beyond the call of duty. And for him, he got shot in the leg multiple times, and he's flying a helicopter. And you're a pilot. You know how important legs are to piloting anything in the air, but I'm fairly certain in a helicopter it's even more important.
Yes.
Because of the instability of the flight. And after being injured severely, bleeding profusely, he dodges machine gun nests, positions his helicopter to where his gunners can take out the machine gun nest, then lands on the compound roof to offload all the operators, and then looks over at his co-pilot and goes, all right, I'm going to pass out now.
Incredible. Totally incredible. So I thought that was neat, and I applaud the president for bringing him in and presenting that award. And then, how could you not like this? Royce Williams, a 100-year-old Navy fighter pilot, served in World War II and the Korean War. I thought they also said, Rhino, in the presentation, did some service in Vietnam. I thought I heard that. I could be wrong about that. But he was, of course, involved in conducting secret missions in World War II. He shot down 4 enemy jets. Actually, the secret missions were in the Korean War in 1952.
Yeah.
And Mr. Trump presented that award to him, and the First Lady put it all around his neck. That was just so cool.
He was sitting there with her the whole night.
The whole time. He was if there's anybody in the whole dang room that deserves to sit in that chair next to the First Lady, it's him. He's 100 years old, and he served this country in World War II and the Korean War.
Holds the record for the longest dogfight in American aviation history.
It's just mind-boggling, man.
Dogfight lasted more than 30 minutes.
Unbelievable.
He was in a team of 4, I think they were Panther jets at the time, early American fighter jets.
In Korea.
In Korean air,
yeah.
in Korea in that conflict.
Yep.
His 4-man team heads out. After they head out, members of the team start dropping out because of mechanical failures. They have to turn back, have to go back. It winds up being him out there by his lonesome, and 7 Soviet MiGs pop up on radar. He took on 7 MiGs.
Unbelievable.
Splashed 4 of them, to use the Top Gun terminology.
Yep.
Severely damaged 2. Scared the other one off. He managed to get away. And he couldn't tell a soul about it for 5 decades because same reason you didn't hear about the involvement with Russian soldiers in Vietnam. The government didn't want the public to know that, yes, American soldiers engaged Soviet soldiers.
Totally.
It happens.
Yeah. That is such a great story. But to see him with a little assistance from, I believe that's probably his daughter. I'm guessing that was next to him. And, man, she had a huge smile on her face, as she should. Did he not look great in that uniform, though? He was just fantastic. So proud to be an American and so grateful to him. Royce Williams, 100-year-old Navy fighter pilot who got the Medal of Honor at the age of 100. Good work, Mr. President. Appreciate that. We're stepping aside for a break. Coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
From the Seabrook.
Okay, is everybody ready?
I'm ready. Ready here.
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth studio. Thanks so much for joining us. So there's been some questions raised about the difference between a 529 college savings plan and the new Trump accounts, which the president, of course, highlighted last night. Just a quick summary reminder. Child born between January 1, 2025, January 31st, 2028 can apply for and receive $1,000 seed money in a Trump account. And then some $5,000 can be contributed to that account by the family, or up to $2,500 of that $5,000 can come from an employer. any growth in the account from investing it. There are some restrictions on the investment. Exchange-traded and indexed funds, specifically, are where the accounts may invest. And the gains received and accrued in the account are not subject to income tax until they are withdrawn, like a typical 401k plan. There's also a penalty of 10% that would apply if funds are withdrawn before the age of 59 and a half, unless those funds are used for buying a house, health care, or education. That's consistent with 401k early withdrawal penalties today. But the 529 plan, the Wall Street Journal points out, offers actually a little better tax benefit because those contributions, when withdrawn for education purposes, that's why they call it a 529 college savings plan, they are not subject to income tax, nor a penalty. And they can also set them up in a custodial Roth IRA. That basically means you pay taxes at that point on the gain when you converted it, but then any contributions that come out or any monies that come out are tax-free and not subject to penalties. So they're just pointing out that if what you're looking for is just to save money for education, this is the Wall Street Journal's opinion, the 529 college savings plan already in place, already available, might be a better option. If you're looking for more options and you want to get the $1,000 that the government would invest in seed into these accounts, then use the new Trump accounts. And the president also made it clear, did he not, Rhino, that it wasn't his idea to to name the accounts after him or the Trump RX prescription drug portal. He made that clear. Wasn't my idea. I thought that was kind of funny.
He had a few tangents that you could tell weren't written in the script that were funny. Came across well. He had a few tangents that were like, where are you going, buddy?
Yeah. Interesting.
Like the Medals of Honor. Like he awards the 2 Medals of Honor and then cracks the joke about, I can't give one to myself. It was like, that one kind of fell flat.
Yeah. I agree. But he spoke for a long time. Hour and 47 minutes. He told us Monday. It's going to be a long speech. Have a lot to talk about. Here's what I'll also credit him with, and something we talked about yesterday is, really focus on the economy and the issues facing Americans around the old kitchen table. It's about the economy, stupid, was famously the famous quip by James Carville during the Clinton campaign period in the late 90s. The president jumped right on that and spent, I didn't really calculate it, but I'm going to guess 2/3 of the speech was devoted to that in those matters. Just contrasting that with the back end of the speech, which got more into foreign policy and some of those issues. Really focused quite heavily on domestic policy. Even had, and I thought this was a good idea, we talked about it yesterday, right? He had somebody in the gallery that he highlighted and stood up and was talking about, I believe, the child tax credit, right? And how the increase in that was benefiting their household, and he brought them in as an example of that. I thought that was a good idea. I really do think that rather than just any political figure, rather than just telling people how great everything is with them and their policies, under them and their policies, get people to say that for you that are experiencing those benefits and they're willing to share and relate those benefits to others. So I thought he did a good job in that respect. And then what about the individual, Rhino? I didn't see this one coming either. The young lady who was being heavily influenced and coaxed.
Socially transitioned?
Correct. With her mother there, right? And he highlighted that that's the whole scenario and that she had kind of been rescued out of that malaise. That is despicable, is it not?
Yeah, that was the moment that brought out they're crazy.
Yeah,
These
that's
people
right.
are crazy.
That's exactly right. Yeah, because that is crazy. And you know what? We've shared this on the program. I've just shared this in my social circles before it because it just blew me away when I came across it. Was this this whole practice of what's called love bombing? Remember that? We learned about certain schools, and I think it was in one of the blue states in the Northeast where whenever one of the students would just talk, I mean, just nip at the idea of, maybe I really wasn't meant to be whatever my true biological reality gender is, and they would just all of a sudden shower them.
I didn't have to get that far. It would be like, I'm a girl and I don't like pink. Oh, you must be trans.
That's right. Didn't take much to trigger it. You're a good point. And then they would just be showered with all sorts of emails and texts and, direct communication of just praising them and lauding them and, oh, I'm so proud of you. And again,
it's a manipulation tactic to get its name from abusers.
That's exactly right. Knowing that a young person, especially one that maybe is struggling mentally, is going to respond to that, eat that up, and want to do whatever they got to do to continue all of that adulation. And that's exactly what happened here. I'm still somewhat upset. I don't mind telling you that in this state, we're unable to get legislation through, right, that would require schools in our state to notify their parents of any inclination, any mention by a student, any reference that, maybe I'm in the wrong body here. We don't require, right? Rhino, you and I looked at this. We couldn't get legislation passed to do that. Just a simple mandate that, if you hear that teacher, administrator in a school from a student, you got to notify the parents. Why can't we get that through here in a red state like Mississippi? As you well know, in some states, they prohibit that. You can't notify parents. You get in trouble for that. You told the parents that their name is Joe, but they want to be Sally when they're here at school, want to be referred to by different pronouns, use different bathrooms, play on different sports teams. No, you can't tell the parents that. You got to hide it. You got to participate in the masquerade, in the myth. That's insane. We should require that. I know I'm getting off on the tangent here, but it made me think about that last night. My guess is that's happening in Mississippi. I don't know the degree of that and the incidents. I don't know. I just believe with 400,000 kids, probably somewhere in there, it's happening. I hope not. I pray not. But if it is, parents need to know. That's pretty straightforward. This garbage about kids belong to the community is nonsense. No, they don't. They're essentially on loan to you for a few hours a day, and your job is to educate them. Period. Not be social justice warriors and influence them and indoctrinate them with your sick agenda. And I'm afraid that does happen, even in our state. Sadly. This is easy, legislature. We should get that done. Remember the thing that got me cracked up, the legislation a couple of years ago, where it detailed when a parent should be notified. One of them was if the student wants to be identified as an extraterrestrial being. Remember that one? We're coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
People ask me all.
It's so awesome! Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Come on, let's get on with the show.
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
I got rice cooking in the microwave. Got a 3-day beard I don't plan to shave. And it's a goofy thing, but I just gotta say, hey, I'm a-doing alright. Yeah, I think I'll make me some homemade soup. Feeling pretty good, and that's the truth. It's neither drink nor drug-induced. No, I'm just doing alright. And it's a great day to be alive. I know the sun's still shining when I close my eyes. There's some hard times in the neighborhood, but why can't every day be just this good? Oh, yeah. It's been 15 years.
All right, we're back. Of course, Omar and Tlaib were heckling the president at the State of the Union address. No surprise there.
Shouting about, you kill Americans.
Yeah, all that kind of stuff. And then the president also, he implored the Congress to pass the Insider Trading Act, which would essentially prohibit members of Congress.
That was one of his quips that really landed.
Oh, it was so great. It would, of course, ban members of Congress from trading individual stocks. And he wanted to see if Nancy Pelosi was standing with the rest of the gallery on that in support. He even called her out, right? He says, is Nancy Pelosi standing for this or something like that?
Probably not.
Oh, man. Yeah, that was interesting. So I'm not sure if that bill makes it or not, right? So I just don't know if it does. But it seemed like the president wants it. We'll see where it goes. I really felt like he was trying to convince voters this is what you do at the State of the Union address, especially in a midterm year, that the U.S. is, as he said, we're winning so much, you're getting sick of it. The golden age of America, as he referred to it. And I think that was his goal, was to convince skeptical Americans that the economy is really stronger than many believe and that they should vote for more of the same by backing Republicans. Come to midterms. Keep it going. And it's really kind of hard to tell at this point how much that message resonated, I should say. But he also, of course, I thought was rather mild about the tariff decision with the Supreme Court. All of them did not attend. They're not required to. And, of course, they, as well, sit in the audience very stone-faced and with little to no reaction. He also said that he'd been working with the technology companies. We reported this yesterday. No laws are coming as a result of this, which is a good thing. I think that would be bad. He said he'd been pressing the big hyperscalers. These are the household names that are building these data centers all over the place to make sure that they cover the cost of the electric power required for those facilities and all of the IT infrastructure under the roof there. He says that he's worked with them and they've agreed they will cover all those costs. I think that's more to quell fears, honestly, than anything. I'm not convinced that actually is as big a problem. I'm not saying electric rates aren't going up, but I'm not sure that there's evidence where you can just point to data centers as the problem there and the driver of that. That more of that I think is just driven by really poor planning and a lot of the costs associated with Biden's push on renewable energy and some attempt to at least desire to use more renewable energy, which is just ridiculously expensive. And as a matter of fact, it's being reported, Rhino, that the president not rescinded some of Biden's orders on coal that with these big storms, winter storms moving through the Northeast, be a lot of people without heat because they just couldn't meet the demand. Coal is still needed for that purpose. So I'd say that's a good thing. He said, people are asking me, please, 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 Mr. President, we're winning too much. We can't take it anymore. He said that before introducing the USA hockey team. Now, there are some organizations that, of course, probably the New York Times is best known for this, where they seek opinion from their various opinion staff, and they chart their opinion on the State of the Union address, and that chart is formed by two axes, one perfectly vertical, one perfectly horizontal, forming four quadrants. That's a typical kind of graph. And the vertical line liked his delivery at the top, hated his delivery at the bottom, and then the horizontal line hated his plans on the left and liked his plans on the right, and then they charted the opinions on that. We'll get to that later on in the program. Right now, it's time for a break. Fox News, SuperTalk News.
Your hour of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by the Mississippi Business Journal. Visit msbusinessjournal.com. Scott Coopwood, publisher and president.
And now, the talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
That's what I like to listen to.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Winter is here again, oh Lord. Haven't been home in a year.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio on this
Hump Day.
Once again, Kiersten Pels, RNC National Press Secretary, will call in at 12:05 today. So, we were supposed to be talking to Representative Hank Zuber today. Something came up there and had to reschedule. Looking forward to that conversation for sure. And then last night, during the State of the Union, or after it, of course, Abigail Spanberger delivered the response. Isn't she something? And she got a little tripped up a couple of times. Didn't really make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah, when she said that Trump was allying with Russia and China by making war with Iran, you kind of have to start ignoring anything she says, because obviously she's just wrong.
Yeah.
How could you possibly say you're allying with Russia and China by hitting Iran when Iran is buddy-buddy with Russia and China, gets military supplies from Russia and China?
It didn't make any sense, honestly, what she had to say.
Unless she's trying to say that by us destroying Russian and Chinese equipment, Iran has to buy more from Russia and China, so it helps Russia and China in that way?
Yeah.
But that wouldn't be allying with.
You'd have to connect a bunch of dots, honestly.
It'd be a bit of a stretch.
Uh-huh. She spoke for 13 minutes, and she said that the president described the nation with lower cost than when he took office, declaring this is the golden age of America. She pointed that out. And she said that he'd go to the Democratic side through the speech, but, of course, they didn't react.
And that could have bit him in the butt.
Yeah, I would agree.
He did gamble a bit with his whole stand if you agree you're supposed to protect American citizens over illegal aliens.
Yep. I agree.
They had just stood up, they'd have called his bluff, and he'd have been standing there going, well, okay.
Yep. They look kind of silly, honestly. Especially
several times.
Yeah. I don't know that no reaction was better than a reaction, but they just – look lifeless more than anything, in my view. So she really tried to tap into the affordability issue, suggesting that Americans really aren't happy about their current financial situation. And she said that Americans deserve to know that their leaders are focused on addressing the problems that keep them up at night. You know, when I see this sort of stuff as a response, and even to a great extent with much of what the president touted, I start to really think that, have we gotten to a point where we expect too much from government? I'm not sure there's anything that would make everybody happy with their economic situation. It just seems like there's always something negative, wanting to point fingers at something or somebody, and government's usually who they do that at. And it's kind of the way we roll and the way we have evolved in this country. But what exactly are you looking for government to do? Now, if you talk to the left about that, they tell you, we just need to tax all the rich people. And that would allow us to create more programs. And my response to that is, you create programs with or without that money. You spend it regardless of how much they pay in. That's not the problem. And you're not really solving any household finance problem by, honestly, just by giving them more money from the government, transferring more money from the government, which is really what I guess they seek to do. We already got half the households that don't pay any income taxes, so you can't say that the tax burden is eating them alive. I know there are a lot of people that do, and I'm one of them, and I'd like to see a lower tax burden as well. But I guess you have to think about, I certainly do, what it would be like if the president hadn't been elected and Republicans weren't in charge and were able to extend the Trump tax cuts, make many of those permanent, and then even enhance them somewhat. I think about what would have happened had that expired at the end of last year. And right now, we'd all have less money coming out of our paychecks, those that actually pay income taxes. We would have reverted to the Obama-era tax environment. That's what would have happened.
We would have had more money coming out of our paychecks.
Yeah, I meant to say less money.
Going home.
Yeah, take home pay. Right. So, yeah, thanks for that correction. But bottom line is, it's hard to appreciate that because we already had it. I think that's one of the big challenges with extending and making permanent the tax provisions that were enacted in 2017 is that most people didn't see any major change there because it just extended what was in place. And folks aren't generally going to think about and consider, well, man, if that had not occurred, this is what my check would look like. This is what my take-home pay would look like, because that's not going to happen and didn't happen. So it's kind of hard to appreciate something that didn't happen, something bad that didn't happen. That usually doesn't get the legs that it deserves and the attention it deserves. But that's exactly what happened here. What occurred is that we avoided what could have been a disaster. And all of this massive investment you see being made by big companies in this country, which, despite what the left says, does benefit workers in the macro economy, and that means all Americans who participate in it, which is every one of us. I know they have a hard time connecting those dots and just rationalizing that. But that wouldn't be happening were it not for the renewal of the original tax environment. And then, of course, the president touted his deregulation of the fossil fuels industry, and he talked about the increase in daily production of oil. That's absolutely true. Now, in fairness, that was on the upswing in Biden's final year. So when he says we're producing about 60 million barrels more a day, that's absolutely right. But it depends on what time period you compare. So But we're at about 13.6 to 13.7 million barrels a day of oil being produced in this country. And depending on what time period you compare that to, in Biden's final year, it's 13.2 to 13.4. So, yeah, there's been improvement, and there's no doubt it's because of the deregulation, which has been as critical as anything to boosting economic growth and the supply of oil, which, no doubt, has cooled the price of gas at the pump. That's what people pay attention to. All those are positives. Had Kamala Harris been elected, that would not have happened. There's no question about that. I think she would have continued Joe Biden's crazy Green New Deal agenda, and oil and gas companies are not interested in boosting supply. As we've said so many times, when you got a government that says we're going to put you out of business, just at a minimum, just a president not saying that gives those big companies little comfort in knowing that, hey, I can actually go do this and make money doing it, and I don't have to look over my shoulder all the time about, are they coming after me to shut me down? And that's what the Democrats never got, because they, of course, genuflect at the altar of climate change. That's more important than affordability. That's where there's a conflict in their attempt to sort of seize that narrative. No, we're the party of affordability. No, hell, you're not. You're quite the opposite.
Every single thing they do leads to a rise in prices.
Exactly right. And a lot of that,
because
as you
you're
know,
subsidizing people that refuse to get off their butt.
And making it difficult and expensive for companies who produce the stuff we consume, and that makes it more expensive. So you got lines going in different directions. They're diverging, and that's not a good thing. Totally. That's because of their policies, which are rooted in ideology, not common sense economics. We're going to take a break right now, coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
This program.
Gerard Gibert.
Here we go.
This is huge.
Huge news. Huge news. Huge.
You need to listen to this. Middays with Gerard. SuperTalk, Mississippi.
I forgot to remember to forget her. I can't seem to get her off my mind. I thought I'd never miss her.
Yeah, in the last segment I misspoke. I said 60,000 barrels, 600,000. So we produce about 13 million, 600,000 to 800,000 barrels per day. And we were about 13,300,000 barrels per day when Joe Biden left office. And there have been months where that has been a case. We've seen a 600,000 barrel a day increase. But in general, for the first year in office, it's about 350,000. Still an increase. So, I mean, you can get into the weeds on the exact amount, but I think that misses the bigger point, which is this administration is fossil fuels friendly, and companies are certainly more apt to go produce more and boost supply, thus keeping prices in check. That's the main takeaway, more than anything. And the president highlighted that price of gas at the pump is down since he's been in office, and it's because of that, because he's not hostile to the fossil fuels industry. If you're hostile to it, guess what? They're going to produce less, and if they produce less, it causes the price to go up. It's pretty straightforward. But I guess you can take some consolation in that you're preventing climate change and the collapse of the planet that so many of those doom and gloomers have predicted in the past, only to be totally wrong. And the president also boasted about stock market gains. And the fact checkers, of course, point out that the gains were less than each of the last 2 years under Biden. And I will offer this thought about why the last 2 years under Biden we did have pretty decent stock market gains. You know why, Rhino? Because we were in stalemate. That's why. Wasn't because of anything Biden did. It's because they couldn't do anything. It's like, okay, we're done with the first 2 years of Biden. All the carnage has been leveraged. They're handcuffed now because Republicans won the House. And he was limited on what he could do with executive orders, and we had a Supreme Court that wasn't too favorable towards his EOs. That's exactly why the markets did pretty well in those last 2 years. It's like we get a rest. No government for a while. You know exactly what I'm saying here. They like the stalemate. They like to.
It's like when the strict teacher catches the flu and has to miss a couple of days, and you get the nice sub.
That's a good point. Good analogy.
You just feel relieved.
Yeah, relieved that they don't have to be constantly watching out. What are they going to do today to impose hardship on us? But the gridlock is good. And that's what happened. Now, what powered the markets last year, no doubt about it, was the fact that we had this big tax structure, this tax bill passed in 2017, expiring. And, man, that's super uncertain for markets. But getting that done, signing it into law on July 4th, powered markets, and especially with the immediate expensing, not only for capital investment, for construction costs associated with new factories. You build a new factory, get to write the whole dang thing off in that year when you take occupancy. So all that's really good stuff. I think what often gets missed is that the message, and if it's a bad message and one that's not grounded in fact, but more politically calculated, you would call it rhetoric. That's as important as the policy. It's the mindset. It's the business mindset. When you just think about your own household, when you feel good about your own situation, you don't feel like you've got to constantly be on the lookout for the other so-called shoe to fall. And that's what this president did, I think, is inject some stability into our country, that, no, we're not going to go crazy, as he said. I just can't imagine all the onerous taxes and regulations the alternative government would have implemented, which would have devastated our economy. And yet it did decent in the last 2 years of Biden's term because of the gridlock. Democrats, you couldn't get your agenda through. That's what I've actually said that about Obama. You look at the first 2 years when he did all the damage he could do with the Affordable Care Act and the stimulus plan coming out of the financial system crash and all that. But then for the remainder of his first term and the entirety of his second term, gridlock. Couldn't get anything done. That was a good thing. Because, he had more teed up. We'd all have to be in a damn union. That's one of the things he wanted. Remember the card check stuff he was pushing hard? The cap and trade? How's that worked out in other countries? Terrible. So, and just more crazy, radical ideas. But those all got shelved in the midterms.
I think you could even say we avoided maintaining the status quo of the murder rate.
Yeah, that's true.
Because he did mention last night that we have the lowest murder rate in history, or at least in like the last 125 years or so. And CBS tried to fact check it and came back, yeah, that's actually true.
Yeah. That is a win. And certainly he highlighted his success at shutting down the border. Huge deal. I would say his greatest accomplishment, honestly. I just can't, I'll never be able to get those images out of my head of sitting in this chair watching that TV with you on the other side every day saying, man, they just panned across the border and there's more people than I've ever seen in my life all lined up to enter this country. Looking again back at this New York Times, they always do a good job of this where they'll have their folks grade the State of the Union speech with just like a one-sentence evaluation. One of them says, so this, by the way, the vast majority of them did chart in the lower left quadrant, if you will, meaning that they hated his plans and hated his delivery. That's how you would get into that quadrant. This one says, a tedious, tiresome performance. Another says, the hate-mongering continues. Pot, meat, kettle. Is the hate more palpable than that held by the Democrats for Donald Trump? Are they serious? Oh, my gosh. Crabby, rambling. Another one stated, nobody will remember it in a week. His showman's energy is flagging. Long, exhausted, and repetitive. A couple of folks who did think that his plans and delivery were good. By the way, the people who opined here, they only landed in those two quadrants. They either liked, or they didn't like, or they hated and hated. Nobody liked the delivery and hated the plans, or liked the plans and hated the delivery. Nobody fell into that quadrant, if you're following me there, if you can visualize. But these two people, one said he's an earnest peacemaker. Another said Trump effectively invoked what is still one of his strongest issues. Not exactly sure what that means, but that could apply to a lot of different stuff. Well, that's pretty neat. That's pretty neat to just look at that analysis. The Fox News says the top 5 unforgettable moments, Al Green being ejected. Again, I would agree. USA chance breakout as the men's hockey team was honored. That's pretty cool because, the whole world saw that. It's really neat. Is it any more appropriate in any venue in the world than in the United States Capitol to chant USA? That's perfect. Trump reprimands the Dems. You should be ashamed. That was their number 3 takeaway moment. Let's see. Number 4, Trump honors military heroism. I agree. That was incredible. Very moving. And then their 5th, young girl who nearly died in illegal immigrant-involved truck crash honored. Little girl. Man, that was pretty cool, wasn't it? I agree. I forgot about that one. So kudos to the president and his team for assembling those everyday Americans in that chamber to be recognized in various areas there. I thought that was pretty cool. But I think the 100-year-old Navy fighter pilot, that may have been my favorite, to be honest with you. Just somebody's still around, a living relic. I mean, fought World War II. Incredible. Coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
From the
Gerard Gibert. He keeps his classified documents right where they belong. Inside a Journey record jacket from the 1980s. Gerard Gibert, SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Can't buy me love, love, can't buy me love. I'll buy you a diamond ring, my friend, if it makes you feel alright. I'll get you anything, my friend, if it makes you feel alright.
The Fab Four, welcome back, everyone. It's middays from the Element Wealth studio. Yeah, Chris and Tupelo tagged us in a pretty cool meme, Rhino, on Twitter. Take a look at it. Yeah, we got it. That is awesome. On the C Spire text line, Amanda from Pike County says, did Fetterman wear his dress tracksuit suit? He actually had a regular old men's suit on, Amanda, with a tie. And the president, as he made his way onto the floor there and working his way up to the podium, stopped, shook hands, of course, with lots of folks. That's customary, and actually shook hands with the senator, Fetterman. Man, he looked good. Had a black suit on, silver tie, white shirt. President also shook hands with the Supreme Court justices just prior to that as he was getting up there to the podium. So, yeah, that's a good one, though, Amanda. I still can't get used to that, seeing that guy is a U.S. Senator wearing his hoodie. I don't know. Can't get into that just yet. I love the part about shoveling snow and needing ID. Yeah, that's on C Spire text line. Yeah, we actually covered that yesterday. And, of course, you know what their response to that is, well, we got to have that for the payroll. Right, but you're still requiring an ID. So you're okay if we say, yeah, we got to have that to make sure you really you're qualified, eligible to vote. What's the problem? And the president did, once again, implore the Congress pass the SAVE Act. And the Democrats totally stone-faced on that one. You saw it. Zero reaction. I just don't see how they can reasonably, rationally justify that position. No, we don't think that legal citizenship and the other requirements to vote should even be considered to allow a person to vote. How can they justify that position? And the president even said it. It's because you want to cheat. He called them out on it. There's only one reason to oppose this. You enjoy cheating. You want to cheat. He also is calling for in the SAVE Act the ending of this practice of mass mail-outs of ballots for mail-in voting, and there are some states, that's the way they operate. Everybody listed on their voter rolls is sent a ballot. In Mississippi, you have to request one and have an excuse to do so. And there's a list of qualified excuses. But in some states, that's how we end up. More than anything, that certainly dramatically increases the risk of ballot and election fraud. It's when you send ballots out to everybody listed on the rolls which are not clean, which contain lots of errors, including dead people, because they don't want to clean them up. They want to send those ballots out. They end up being harvested and completed by someone other than the individual to whom it was ostensibly sent. That, by far, is where whatever fraud occurs and to whatever extent it affected outcomes, that's the process that opens it wide up right there. Is these mass mail-outs, and these ballots just end up everywhere. That's a problem. Trump should have invited the hockey team to sit down. Plenty of seats. Here on my right, said Brian. That's true. How many didn't come? 75 or so, right? Yesterday we said 22 had announced they weren't attending. They ended up with, that's almost, there's 218 of them, right? So a third of them? Well, no, you got to count the other side, the Senate as well. But that's still a lot, 75. 20%? A quarter? About right. Don't show up. Unbelievable. Benny Thompson called that shooting an unfortunate accident, talking about the two National Guardsmen, one of which lost their life, one of which was injured and was commended last night. Yeah, That's exactly right. An unfortunate incident. CC in Senatovia, these far-left liberal Democrats couldn't give a rip about anything we have come to honor. They hate America, want you dead if you don't agree with their crazy liberal agenda. It certainly does make one shake their hand when they just seem less than enthusiastic about just good old-fashioned American values and patriotism. And that was on full display last night. Makes you proud to be an American. I certainly was, especially in the recognition of those who wear our nation's uniform. Man, that's just incredible to think about what they sacrificed to do for us, and not just those that were there, but everybody that has passed through that gate. Chad and Van Cleve, what a great address, y'all. I'm a military freak. Those folks were so deserving. Amen. Totally agree. Shame that I couldn't put money into a Roth for my kids. They had to actually have a job, says Bill in the Pine Belt. Yeah, some changes being made along those lines. And again, the Wall Street Journal does a good job of pointing out that, hey, if you just want to save money for education, a 529 plan that we already have is a better route than the new Trump accounts. The only difference is you don't get the $1,000. Last night's speech was the longest, says Ricky in Aberdeen. I've heard President Trump's speech without putting his foot in his mouth. You know, I honestly thought that his delivery was a pleasant surprise. I didn't find him again to be so pugnacious and confrontational. I thought it was more upbeat and uplifting. A few times, of course, when we talked about the crazy Democrats, but they kind of asked for it in that respect. I thought it was way more positive than it was divisive and confrontational, which I think was, I think it's fair to say, a departure from prior speeches. I truly did expect more grief to be doled out to the Supreme Court folks, but he didn't. He just
likely
said
would have been if he hadn't had an alternative.
That's probably true. But use of the word unfortunate, I thought, was a great choice by the speechwriters there. It referring to the decision, unfortunate decision. I like that. Thought that was good. Isn't Cindy Hyde-Smith against the insider trading bill? I don't recall. Rhino, do you? Because I'm trying to think of whether or not there's one in the Senate. As I recall, one in the House. Maybe it's Rand Paul that introduced one in the Senate. Here's the problem with these deadgum bills and trying to do the gotcha routine on any elected official, be it the Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith or any others, is that, as you know, Rhino, they have a tendency to create, I know you're shocked at this duplicity, but they have a tendency to create these bills, and they'll title them like insider trading bill, and then you do your research and you dig in and analyze these measures, and they incorporate all kinds of crazy stuff in there that doesn't belong, that would be objectionable. It's like a poison pill sort of deal. And I'm not saying that happened. I'm just saying that does. I've never heard Senator Hyde-Smith say she's opposed to this. I can't imagine that she would be, honestly, just following her and her politics and her voting inclinations, especially is her loyalty to the president and the president asking the Congress to pass this legislation. I'd be shocked if she crossed the president on that matter. I just don't see it. So I know Rhino's looking at something
Only
right
thing
now.
I can find is she did vote with Republicans against Democrats 9-8 in the Senate Rules and Administration Committee on an amendment regarding insider trading, and it would prohibit senators from trading individual stocks within 1 year.
Okay.
It was an amendment offered by Democrat Senator John Ossoff from Georgia.
Okay, yeah.
But it was along party lines.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So something else is going on is what I'm saying there. I think there is a bill in the House, though, right, Rhino, that's pretty straightforward and pretty focused on just that.
There's another bill that hasn't made it to the floor for a vote out of the Senate that came out of the Homeland Security Committee.
Yep.
It was voted 8-7 to advance legislation that would ban stock trading by members of Congress. And Senator Josh Hawley joined Democrats in that vote in support.
Okay. We'll see where that goes now that the president is kind of giving them some marching orders on that. On the C Spire text line real quick before the break, Tommy Tuberville is of the opinion that if Congress can't partake in insider trading, nobody would want to run for the office. It's a complete joke when any of Congress says no one is above the law. I think I do recall seeing something about that. We'll look that up, where Tommy Tuberville stands on that. I think I have heard him raise that objection. But there's a lot more to it. Coming right back.
Poly-Up of Mississippi.
Covering the stories that matter most to Mississippians. Gerard Gibert. Middays with Gerard. SuperTalk, Mississippi.
We're back with you in the Element Wealth studio. So Rhino and I were just talking about the insider trading because we got a text on that, Tommy Tuberville. So tell the folks, Rhino, what Tommy Tuberville historically has said about that.
Yeah, I mean, he did a whole interview in response to the bill getting out of Homeland Security with Josh Hawley voting with the Democrats. And he said, I don't side with Josh Hawley on this. This is a free country. You know, I've made a little money in my life through coaching. I don't trade stocks. I have a stockbroker. If you're going to make any money while you're here in Congress, put your money with a stockbroker. Mine's in a trust, and let it go. Invest in our country. Now, I understand they're looking at one person, Nancy Pelosi, who's made millions, by the way. But she's been here forever. Most of the time, if you're going to get any information that's going to help you, you're probably going to be in leadership. I've not seen one thing up here, and I'm on the Ag Committee, Armed Services, the VA, the Health Committee, Education, Labor, and Pension. Haven't learned one thing up here that would make a dime. I don't know where Josh is coming from on this. I take a totally opposite stance. Invest in America. That's what this country's all about. Again, if you're insider trading, you should be caught and you should be put in jail. My goodness, to punish everybody for a couple people up here is dead wrong. End quote.
That's actually a fairly reasonable assessment, I think, in position. And I've
it's
said
in the same vein as the other argument that now with how readily available public trades are.
Right.
And how many people are basically tying a portion of their paycheck to whether or not Pelosi wins or loses on the stock market.
Right.
That you do have an avenue for even the average Joe to take advantage of these quote-unquote insider trades. Because insider trading, like you've said many times, is already illegal. If they get caught using information that they gained to make money, that's against the law.
Well, let's qualify that they gained on an insider basis. Correct. Is not publicly available. And the point I've made is there's not much of that anymore. There was a time when the velocity and access and availability of information, it did put them in a favorable position.
But it's going to be hard to convince the average person that has heard their whole life that all you have up there in Washington is a bunch of crooks.
And I know, and I get it. And I've said many times, if we're going to end it, do it for optics purposes, right? Just eliminate that concern. And it's the same thing I've said about state PERS. You know, even though the supplemental legislative retirement program that is only available to the members of the legislature doesn't amount to less than petty cash relative to the PERS unfunded liability from an optics perspective. Just get rid of it. And just take that out of the discussion. And I think that's where we are here. I've heard people complain about insider trading by certain members of Congress, and then you go look. By the way, they have to share, they have to record and submit their trading activity. They have to do that now, and they get fined if they're late on that. But you go look at it, it's like, oh, they bought Apple. Yeah, you and 8 million other people on that day bought it. It's not like there's any insider information to that. There just hardly is any anymore. And you heard Tuberville say it. What did he say? Armed Forces, Ag, all these other. Now, there was a time when, Armed Forces, you could say, hey, it looks like we're going to funnel a bunch of money to build some military assets to these companies. That's going to boost their stocks. Boom, I'm going to go buy it before that happens. That's just almost irrelevant nowadays to the price of stocks. There could be certainly some regulations that they could be apprised of before the rest of the world does, but it's just not much. If you start hearing about crazy regulations being proposed out of Washington that might affect an industry, hell, let's be honest, you'll see the stock plummet that day. I mean, just at the mere utterance of the possibility, just the possibility will send investors. That's because the algorithms and the computers that do all that trading get that news and say, wait, this could affect these companies, sell. That's exactly what happens. It's not people doing that. But, again, just to relieve any concerns people have, and I'm with them, we could ban it just from the standpoint of just the optics of it. It just looks bad that you go up there as a public servant and you're trading stocks and you do well. Well, so are a lot of other people. They're trading stocks and they're doing well. And they don't have access to the stuff that Congress does. And honestly, I'm not so sure they have access to a lot of stuff any faster than we do about what they're doing. I mean, the way that is so wide up out in the open, but more importantly, the way it gets captured and then reported, it's like instant in our hands. Heck, we probably have the information faster than many members of Congress do. We're going to step aside for Fox News and SuperTalk News. We're coming right back. We've got Kiersten Pels, the RNC National Press Secretary.
Welcome to the show that challenges you to think deeply, and look beyond political posturing. You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It is hour 3, the afternoon portion of Middays, live from the Element Wealth studio on this
Hump Day.
So we've got Kiersten Pels, RNC National Press Secretary, joining Middays in the next segment at 12:20. We've had a little bit of rescheduling. Just wanted to pass that on. In the meantime, I need to clarify some comments that I made yesterday during our broadcast regarding grants. You recall that discussion, Rhino? This was a report from the state auditor's office about some grants that flowed through, I believe, the Department of Education, as I recall. And there's some reporting requirements that weren't being made regarding those grants. And so we received a text on the text line, which I read, as we do on a regular basis here. I haven't searched for the text, but we want to clarify something about that. And this text concerned Southern Pine Electric Corporation. And the company has informed us that they do not spend any portion of member revenue to fund any grant program and do not offer any government-related grants. The program that was being referred to is Members Helping Members, which Southern Pine members voluntarily contribute to by rounding up their bill. Now, you understand in the context of electric co-ops, members are those who consume the power, the electricity that they provide. They're referred to as members. Just want to clarify that. The program benefits selected school, charitable organizations, first responders, fire departments, and law enforcement agencies across an 11-county area. Applications are fully vetted by the Pine Belt Foundation, and 100% of grant funds are accounted for when approved projects are completed. Full financial disclosure of all funds and all disbursements is provided annually to the members. For more information, you can visit Southern Pine Co-op, that's COOP/MHM. We are working on having somebody from Southern Pine Electric Co-op on the show, hopefully tomorrow perhaps, to explain more about the program and its benefits. So my sincere apologies to Southern Pine Electric Co-op and all of their members and staff and partners. As Rhino knows, when you're sitting in this chair and you're reading through those texts, some, as you know, we can't read. We find them inappropriate. And this one was one that I should have thought about a little more before I read it. I made a mistake. I fully admit that. And I apologize for that. I got to tell you, Rhino, when I was reading it, I'm not sure I even understood what it was trying to say. I couldn't recall it right now if I had to. And as I recall, we moved forward, but the discussion centered around the failure of some organizations who receive grants to report as required as a condition of those grants that the state auditor has highlighted and published a press release. Or, I mean,
just the conversation surrounding the lack of requirement to report, like with a lot of
totally true.
Like the issue in Minnesota with the Leering Center and all that. There's no requirement for them to report daily attendance. So if you get all this money and you say you've got 50 kids in attendance, but you never report the daily attendance, they're getting the money to take care of 50 kids, but there's no avenue to see whether or not they actually care for 50 kids.
And then you get this YouTuber, 20-something-year-old YouTuber that goes out, just curious with a camera and says, wait, there's nobody in this place, nobody coming in here. So just want to clarify, though, that's a completely separate matter, and I don't recall exactly what was in the text. It doesn't matter at this point, but we do just want to clarify that this organization, Southern Pine Electric Co-op, doesn't spend any of the revenue that it generates from its members, its consumers, its customers, to fund any grant programs, and they don't offer any government-related grants, which I wouldn't expect them to, honestly. And if the text insinuated that and we read that, again, my complete and full apologies. I hope that you accept that. I've heard nothing but positive things about this organization, and including from its members. So, and I think it's a good program. It sounds like members helping members. That sounds like a pretty good deal. It kind of reminds me of, Rhino, most people out there have experienced this when in a retail setting, when you can round up for certain causes when you're checking out. Hey, would you like to round up to contribute to this? Seems like a similar model is the way I interpret this. And those round up dollars, cents, if you will, are being used in a positive way to benefit certain schools and charitable organizations, first responders, fire departments, law enforcement agencies in that 11-county area served by the company. Sounds like a good plan that, honestly, others ought to replicate, in my view. So appreciate you clarifying that for us. Again, please accept my sincere apology for misrepresenting that in the reading of the text. I can't make any excuses other than, as Rhino knows, when you sit in this chair and you got hundreds of those texts flying through, you try to be careful as possible with them, and every now and then make a mistake. I freely admit that, and I apologize. So thanks for the statement, and thanks for the clarification. And honestly, kudos to you guys for that program if you're listening to us. So back to the insider trading thing.
Well, before we get to that, we did have a question from Jason in Starkville.
Yeah.
You were talking about the algorithm making trades and stuff, and he asked, can the average person buy software for AI to buy stocks? And, yeah, there are several platforms out there. Like, I sent him the names of a few that just popped up on Google real quick. But, yeah, you can buy in on platforms, and they have AI trade bots that will work round the clock, 24/7, 365 days a year, making trades on your behalf. And some of them, you can get skin in the game for as little as $300-400.
Yeah. I mean, again, illustrating the power of all this technology and how it's virtually impossible for anybody to have any sort of insider information. It's just there's hardly anything that you can't find anymore. I always wondered about these really big companies and knowing that, like NVIDIA, as an example, reporting after the bell today. Now, the whole investment world is on their seats on what NVIDIA, this, is going to report today because of the big AI trade and all that. So, and they're kind of at the heart of that industry, of course. And what they're going to be tuned into is what is Jensen Huang, their CEO, is going to say, not only about the prior quarter, they're going to have to do well there, but what's going on in the future? That's what investors focus on. Tell us about the future. Guidance is what it's referred to. And the whole world's going to be watching that. Now, given that that's probably a stock that a whole bunch of people have made a lot of money on, it is. Was there anything insider in the government that could have affected that stock one way or another? About the only thing I could think of right now. It's not like it was concealed or confidential, is whether or not the president was going to let them sell chips to China. I mean, it had a little bit of an impact. But, the mere rumbling of that possibility affected the stock. Heck, in the tech world, it's lawsuits that seem to get investors all up in arms. And most of those come from Europe. They just decide, we're going to sue these tech companies. And I've always thought that's because you're just insanely jealous and resentful that there are no such major companies based here. And that's because you guys don't work a whole lot.
I was going to say that's part of it. The other part of it is because they're desperate, because they've built up this whole infrastructure of handouts that they can no longer afford because they've got too many people on the dole.
But I don't think I'm talking out of school here. Do you not believe it's created a culture of laziness to a great extent in Europe? I do. I really do. And you know what? You can't create NVIDIA chips if you're lazy. That requires a lot of midnight oil and a lot of sacrifice. But that's why 75% of the employees are millionaires. Once again, my sincere apology to Southern Pine Electric Cooperative. We're going to take a break right now. Kiersten Pels, RNC National Press Secretary, joins Middays next.
I'm Sandy.
Interrupt this program.
Gerard Gibert.
Here we go.
This is huge. Huge news. Huge news. Huge. You need to listen to this.
Middays with Gerard. SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It is Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. So, real quick, I just want to point this out. Jason in Starkville says Ford County Electric also has a similar program. Dan in Hattiesburg says his local co-op does a similar thing. So it sounds like that's kind of a common practice among the electric co-ops, perhaps in the state of Mississippi. It's a good program. I'm glad to know that. We welcome now Kiersten Pels, the RNC National Press Secretary. Hey, Kiersten.
Hi, thank you for having me.
You bet. So big night last night for, of course, the president as the leader of the Republican Party, and the Republicans seem to be really fired up. I noted on his way out as he exited the chamber there that he was receiving all sorts of glad hand congratulations and kudos for his speech, the message, his delivery. What do you think?
I thought it was a great speech. I thought particularly the ending was so inspiring when he was talking about America's 250th anniversary and speaking to the spirit and the patriotism of Americans, how hardworking we are, how we can do anything we set our minds to. I thought that was a beautiful ending. And overall, I thought the speech was really, really on target, on message. It was disciplined. He really went through and really answered Americans' questions that they had on answering their concerns about the economy, on the border, on peace deals, on everything that he's doing to bring down prices for Americans. I think this speech really highlighted why he won the popular vote. I think it shows how in tune he is with the very real concerns of voters and how much he's working to make sure that all Americans all over the country, their voices are being heard, and he's delivering on all of the promises that he made to them.
You know, there was a lot of talk in the inside baseball sort of talk that, I hope the president really does focus on the cost of living, the so-called affordability narrative. And he got right to that. I mean, after he noted that it's our 250th year, he went straight to that and not only highlighted accomplishments, talked about his plans, but had some real people there in the chamber that also stood up and recognized that, yeah, these policies are helping me in my household.
I thought it was a very intelligent and incredibly powerful message that he displayed by highlighting individuals that have been helped by the tax cuts, by the lower prices, by all of the policies that President Trump and Republicans have pushed forward in the One Big Beautiful Bill, for example, and how this helps small business owners. I think by really humanizing it and putting a face up for the world to see and showing how the America First policies that the president has been putting forward is actually helping real people and how he's going to continue to do that going forward. So I thought that was a very powerful display where he showed real Americans who have really been impacted and have benefited from all of the accomplishments that this administration has done in just a little over a year.
I totally agree, Kiersten, because it's one thing for, of course, the person who promoted and who spearheaded the policies to talk about the success. But it's really another when the people who are on the receiving end of those policies can also report benefit.
That's absolutely true. And so I thought when he went throughout the speech and he was talking about specific policies, things he's done to bring down prescription drugs, again, his tax cuts, other actions that he's done to lower inflation from sky-high levels under Joe Biden, which he did reference. He referenced the fact that when he inherited this economy, it was the economy was in free fall, the borders were wide open, and in just over a year, he's really done everything to turn this around, and his work is just getting started. And I think his guests highlight the impacts of this economy, of this president's accomplishments. And so I thought that the real contrast, the real dividing line that you saw was the positivity, the message that President Trump is on the side of Americans. And then you did see Democrats in the crowd who refused to stand for common sense. They refuse to stand for the proposition that our government should serve American citizens, not illegal aliens. That's I think one of the biggest takeaways of the night, to be honest.
Yeah, we agree. We discussed that earlier on the show. That was just shocking to me, honestly, that something that seems so simple, and kudos to whoever planned that. I thought that was well designed, and I thought hit the mark perfectly in that respect. He also laid out his vision for his plans and his agenda and how that might affect Americans on a positive perspective. Do you feel, Kiersten, that that will be valuable as we approach the midterms? Did he make some progress for us there?
I think he did. I think he did a great job of highlighting all of the work that he's done and all of the concerns from the Americans around the country that they want to see prices come down. And so I think the president really ensured last night that Americans heard that this is a priority for him. He's going to continue to focus on this for the American people. And when he's working to bring down gas prices, bring down inflation, he's rolling out policy proposals on healthcare and on other initiatives he's really showing that this isn't just talk, this is action, and this is why the American people voted for President Trump. I think if you see if you saw the president last night and you saw the way that he was talking about the solutions that he was offering and just on all fronts that he's really focused on answering the American people and making sure that their voices are heard, that is why he won the popular vote in 2024. I think that was really on display last night.
Yeah, totally agree. And it's no secret that some have criticized, including the Wall Street Journal, have criticized the president as maybe leaning too much into foreign issues and matters and not enough on the domestic front. But I was really pleased to see that he jumped right into domestic issues and really homed in on this affordability narrative. He did great with respect to addressing various foreign matters, successes on those policies and some plans and future agenda items there, but spent most of his speech focused on right here at home.
He definitely did. And I think another contrast that we can look to, at least with Democrats, is Democrats hide behind this sort of vague term affordability. Well, they have no solutions to offer. President Trump is going down the list. He's saying, I lowered prescription drugs. I lowered inflation. I'm lowering gas prices. I'm making sure that Americans can afford their healthcare premiums. He's going down all of the accomplishments that he's achieved, all of the concrete and substantial things that he's done. And you look at that and you compare it to Democrats who are they have no solutions. They have nothing to offer. And they can take cheap shots all they want. I thought they looked pretty unhinged last night and very lost and fractured as a party, to be honest. The only thing that unites them is hatred of Trump. And so I think all of the common sense policies, the American people are on the side of solutions and of America first. I really don't even know who the constituency for these Democrats is anymore.
Yeah, they tend to want to always inject the personalities into the discourse as opposed to just talking about policies, because their policies are generally losers. What did you think about, speaking of which, the governor of Virginia, Abigail Spanberger, her response, 13 minutes last night? What did you think?
I mean, her response was just so irrelevant. It did not break through at all. She was bland. She was boring. She was rolling out these talking points. And by the way, she's a radical Democrat who has raised taxes on Virginians. I know people in Virginia who are now thinking of leaving the state because of what she's doing to it. And so this is their so-called leader. It was just bizarre. She has no charisma. She has no solutions. She is a radical, and she has nothing to say of any import. And I don't even think I've seen much this morning and today about anything that she said, because I really think it was just a total missed opportunity for her. She really achieved nothing by doing that speech. And you also had a very fractured response. You had Summer Lee, the radical progressive, going out there doing her response. You had Alex Padilla doing his. And so there was all kinds of Democrats pulling stunts and antics last night, and they really didn't have one unified response at all.
Yeah, we noted that. And then 75 Democrats were absent, decided not to attend the State of the Union address. Your thoughts on that?
Right. And I think the message there is that these Democrats don't actually care about doing their jobs and showing up. They just would rather sit home to prove a point, because they're grandstanders and they are all pandering to a far left base that I guess wants to see them just get out there and spew radical policies all day long. And I really thought it spoke very poorly of them that they were boycotting the State of the Union, which, by the way, we were honoring veterans, war veterans who've served our country. We were honoring the men's Olympic hockey team. We were honoring proud Americans who are incredible and excellent in all ways. And they decided to just sit at home or to go to these these rallies that are just were full of radical people. They were crazy. I saw one clip where it was a Democrat sort of counter-programming event, and there was a bunch of frogs, people in frog costumes that were hopping around. I was like, who is this speaking to? I have no idea.
My producer, Rhino, just shared that with me. Some guy in a giraffe costume. I don't know what that was all about. My gosh. Wow. Really enjoyed the discussion, Kiersten. Thanks for the analysis. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
You bet. Kiersten Pels, RNC National Press Secretary, has been our guest on Middays. We're stepping aside, coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
From the Seabrook
Middays with Gerard.
Good for America. Good for fans of justice and truth. Good for us.
SuperTalk Mississippi.
This is what we stand for.
You know, we were talking about Abigail Spanberger. Oh, geez. The ill-advised governor of Virginia. And you heard Kiersten Pels. We appreciate her coming on, RNC National Press Secretary, in the middle of that world, talking about folks looking to get out of Virginia. Because Abigail Spanberger immediately jumps on raising taxes. They also flipped a bunch of legislative seats. They've got the levers of power. Have you heard about this one, though, Rhino? The dog walking tax.
Oh, yeah. Somebody made an AI video of her walking over to a dog walker, taking money out of his pocket and putting it in hers, and dog walking tax popped up. AI is going to one-shot people. The better it gets.
They want new taxes on a plethora of services, including dog walking, dog grooming, other various personal services. They also want taxes on home repairs and gym memberships. Unfreaking believable, huh? They never met a tax they didn't like. And for what purpose? Programs. So we can issue grants to people that actually just steal the money and don't do anything. That's what's really sad. So you have to have a dog license tax in Virginia now. $10 to $50 a year, $50 for a lifetime license, $10 per year. And then there's some fees that could vary by the actual locality.
Because, the humanity if you were to use an unlicensed dog walker.
Unlicensed dog. It's just incredible.
They won't use the right bags to pick up the poop.
The C Spire text line, Jason in Starkville says, the costumes are for the alphabet furries. Rhino did send me a video that was just incredible of the dude dressed up like a giraffe. And using all these clever little pejorative descriptions of the president. I'm not even going to repeat them. And there's a group of people. He's on a stage and he's performing whatever his little song is there.
Oh, yeah.
Incredible. That's their response.
I mean, those are the protesters that travel across the country to show their butt in public to get that sweet, sweet dopamine from all that attention.
Just unbelievable. Now,
that's the ultimate irony of how weird and we'll go with weird. That's the most radio safe way to talk about them. That they crave this attention, but they hide their identity.
Yeah,
they're wearing the frog costumes or the giraffe outfit, and they'll say you can't use pepper spray paintballs on me if I'm in a frog costume. Yeah, but if the tear gas gets in the little air pump, you're going to have a whole gas chamber to yourself. They're not the brightest bulbs in the fixture.
No, and I just don't know that that's gaining any traction. I really don't.
It's just a way for them to fly their freak flag. And, again,
freak flag. That's so true. Well, the fact checkers, of course, are out in full force. And I did a little of my own fact checking. I don't mind telling you that. I would do that regardless of who's speaking because I don't think...
like when he said we have more Americans working now than ever, I was like, that sounds good, but is that true?
Yeah.
You look it up? Yeah. Bureau of Labor Statistics, there are more Americans working now than ever before.
That's absolutely true. Yeah, that is a true story. There are some things that certainly could be questioned, I'll just put it that way. GDP growth, when you look at real GDP growth and inflation, and the message there is that it just depends on what you're comparing to what, right? So you talk about that at a really high level. That could be accurate and factual, but you got to have the context of what period are you comparing to what period sort of deal. Job growth did slow a bit last year, so your point is correct that we do have more Americans working than ever before. But if you consider population growth, there is some concern that it's not keeping up, right? So that's something to be concerned about. I also say this. It's been a year. It's only been a year. These policies haven't fully baked in. And one more time, and Mo said something earlier on the C Spire text line, we can't rely on government for this. All they can do is create the environment, and that primarily consists of taxes and regulations with respect to economic issues, right? And then get the hell out of the way and let the market take over. But I think we've almost become accustomed to expecting government to just solve all of our problems. It's not the purpose of government. And I'm talking about folks on the left and the right. I think when we have arrived, and that's understood, is when the politicians no longer are blamed for bad stuff or credited for good stuff. That means they're not doing anything, which is likely good. His signature accomplishment is passing the One Big Beautiful Bill Act from a legislative perspective. Nothing legislative associated with closing the border. That may be his greatest feat. But all that took was just enforcing existing law. He said that when he was a candidate. We don't need more laws. We just need a new president here. But the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, let's be honest, that was necessitated by Democrats' unwillingness to support it. If they would have supported the bill in 2017, we could have made all that permanent and not have all this angst and all this stress about, oh my gosh, my taxes are going up. If they'd have made it permanent in 17 and saw fit to do that, it'd be a non-issue. So what we had to do is avoid that prospect. And that's what we did in passing that law. It just continued and added a few things to it. But even those are not permanent. The tips, the overtime, automobile deductibility of the interest, the additional standard deduction for seniors, all those are temporary. Why? Because Democrats won't support them. You know this. They could pass a one-page bill today with Democrat support in the Senate and make all that permanent. Today. But they won't do it. Not because they necessarily disagree with the policy. They don't want to hand Trump and Republicans a victory. Because it's not something that they thought about or ever pushed for. All they ever think about and push for is higher taxes on the higher income earners. That's their tax policy. Get more from those people. They never talk about anything creative or innovative to help the average worker. It's always about, we're going to go punish those people. We're going to confiscate from them. Well, that doesn't make anybody below them any better off financially, despite what they may think. And I guess there are some people that get a rise out of that. But how long does that last, Rhino? A day, maybe? I feel good because they went and put more taxes on those rich people. Okay, back to work. I'm still broke, right? You hadn't fixed anything. So this could be permanent with Democrat support. All of that anxiety, all that stress, all of that debate and back and forth was all because they won't sign on to it for political purposes. And, if you went to the average person on the street and said, hey, do you think it'd be a good idea if we allowed tips to be exempt from income tax? A lot of people would say, yeah. Hey, that's a Trump idea. Oh, okay, I'm against it now, right? You get that. Well, that's where our politics has gotten.
They did a man on the street. I forget who it was, but there was somebody going around college campuses yesterday, before the State of the Union, asking college students to rate the State of the Union 1 to 10 and to explain why they felt that way. And you had college students with full throat talking about how it was a terrible speech. You just rambled. You lied.
Before the speech, right? Yeah.
Hours before the speech ever happened.
Gosh, God help us, man. Man, oh, man. Hey, Gerard, is the no tax on overtime just a percentage of the overtime amount or total amount of overtime? Great question. And, it's worth covering that again. So it's just a premium portion of your overtime. Easy definition of that. If you make $10 an hour on your regular pay and compensation, but when you work overtime, you make $15 an hour, it's the $5 per hour portion that is deductible. The $10 per hour portion of your overtime work is still subject to taxes. It's just the $5 per hour that is exempt. It's actually not even exempt. It's deductible. It works out to pretty much the same thing. The reason that the main difference between exempt and deductible is during the year when you're getting paid, that's not figured into your withholdings. Your employer doesn't know that. You have to square up when you do your tax return. That's the difference between exemption and deduction in this context. Final segment on the other side of this break. Stay with us.
Covering the stories that matter most to Mississippians. Gerard Gibert. Middays with Gerard. SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. Final segment of Middays today. So once again, yesterday I read a text on the C Spire text line that I deeply regret reading, and it concerns the Southern Pine Electric Cooperative. And they sent us a statement that I wanted to share with you concerning the company, the co-op, actually. They informed us that they do not spend any portion of member revenue to fund any grant program and do not offer any government-related grants. That the program likely being referred to is known as Members Helping Members, which Southern Pine members voluntarily contribute to by rounding up their bill. This program, this Members Helping Members program, benefits selected school, charitable organizations, first responders, fire departments, and law enforcement agencies across the 11-county area the organization serves. Applications are fully vetted by the Pine Belt Foundation, who I assume administers the program, and 100% of grant funds are accounted for when approved projects are completed. Full financial disclosure of all funds and disbursements is provided annually to the members. So the members that are rounding up their bills receive information from the organization concerning how that money gets allocated and put to use. For more information, you can visit southernpine.coop. That's COOP/M as in Mike, H as in hotel, M-M-H-M. So we're going to get somebody on from Southern Pine Electric Co-op on our program to talk more about the Members Helping Members program that they operate. So appreciate the clarification. Apologize for any confusion there in reading the text. Just kind of reflexive as we go through the large number that roll through every day. Apologize for that. We're usually pretty good about reviewing those before we just read them on the air. Some we don't touch whatsoever, as Rhino knows. Some we respond to on the text line but don't read on the air. And then others we do. This was a poor decision on my part to read that particular text. Certainly no malicious intent whatsoever. I hope the Southern Pine Electric Co-op folks understand that. And it was just related to a conversation we were having about a lot of misspending. And this organization is not connected to that in any way, shape, or form. This sounds like a great program. We've had two of our audience weigh in that their co-ops do the same thing. So sounds like a great way to, again, the power of people helping other people is way more effective, I believe, than when government does it. We need more of that. So kudos to you guys for launching and operating such a program. Appreciate the clarification. Members of Congress routinely outperform the S&P 500. That could be, but you can't just point to that and say that's because they have insider information. If you go look at what they're trading, I can't find anything that would be insider. I mean, if you look at the stocks that most of these folks, it's not like, well, I found a nugget that's fixing to have some major impact by law or policy we're about to issue here, and it's trading for 10 cents today and it's going to be $100 tomorrow. No, they're buying Apple and Microsoft and NVIDIA, just like the rest of the world is, or energy stocks or bank stocks. And it'd be pretty hard, if you think about it, right over the last 3 years, to not do well and improve the value of your portfolio. That's the good news, because our country's doing well, and these public companies are participating in those good fortunes as well, and that's driving their stocks. Wait till you see NVIDIA today. Investors must have a pretty good feeling about what they're going to announce. It's speculative, of course, but that their quarterly earnings will be reported after the bell. And the reason I say they must have a pretty good feeling about it is because the stock is up, Microsoft's up rather considerably today as well, because an announcement from NVIDIA that's viewed as positive from traders is going to drag those others in the industry. That's typically how it works. It is kind of interesting, is it not, Rhino, is that most of the bad news that affects these guys is freaking lawsuits. Like I said, coming from Japan, I think, had one, and the EU. And I've just always felt like you guys are just jealous. You don't have any Microsofts. You don't have any NVIDIAs.
It's the envy and misery that comes with the midwittery of being a liberal. I mean, perfect example of the mindless midwittery of the average modern liberal. Get this in before we get out of here. Somebody on the internet said they should take away all the medals from the U.S. men's hockey team and remove them from the record book, and also ban them from playing in the NHL moving forward. This is the only appropriate response to them celebrating the current U.S. government and country. The Olympics is no place for nationalism.
Oh, my gosh.
That's your average Democrat right there.
They're just miserable.
In a nutshell.
They're miserable. And they want everybody else to be miserable.
Shame them, and get them out of your life because they're just terrible people.
We are out of here today. Back with you again tomorrow in the Element Wealth studio. Until then, stay safe and God bless everyone.
A SuperTalk Mississippi media production.